Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And again, later on in the week on Friday nights, this show is rebroadcast, and hopefully I will have all the iTunes stuff figured out very soon, or hopefully it is working by the time you're actually hearing this right now. But anyway, let's get on with the show today. I've got a very special guest, and that is Frank Dimatteo. And Frank is the author of The President Street Boys Growing Up Mafia, which chronicles his time growing up in the Mafia as well as living in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Which is now is referred to as Carroll Gardens, but of course Frank would definitely refer to it as South Brooklyn. But Frank Dimatteo, how are you?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you. How are you?
Okay, very good.
Yeah. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Frank, give the listeners a little bit of background. Who is Frank Dimatteo before we jump into the book?
Okay, well, I'm the son of Richard Dimatteo, which was a bodyguard for Larry Gallo, for the Gallo family. And I just grew up under my father's rule, and I'm here today.
Excellent. And you're also the publisher of Mob Candy magazine. People might be familiar with that.
Yeah, right. I publish a magazine called Mob Candy, and another one called President Street Boys.
Okay, excellent. Well, Frank, as I was saying, I contacted you a little while ago because I'd come across an interview that you did talking about the President Street Boys, and I was just amazed because, I grew up on President Street between Clinton and Henry, and obviously when I moved there when I was a kid, the neighborhood was still very Italian. I'm Italian on my mother's side. My mom's cousin worked at the pasta store, which used to be next to Marco Polo on Court Street. We used to live on Union, which was always, big fireworks and stuff on the 4th of July. And slowly the neighborhood has changed. I mean, I don't know if you've been back there recently, but it's definitely not quite the neighborhood that it used to be. But Frank, give the listeners a little bit of a flavor for what was the neighborhood like when you were growing up there, and begin to kind of paint us a picture of the neighborhood and of course the major figures in the neighborhood such as Joe Gallo.
Well, traditionally it's been an Italian neighborhood. Our fathers and grandfathers were all longshoremen. I grew up early 60s, 70s in a neighborhood which was still strong Italian neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Most of the stores were run by our, family members or our neighbors. Everybody stood pretty much local, and it was most of the businesses was locally owned. You go down the corner and your neighbor owns the bread store, or your other neighbor owns the grocery store. So it was a pretty tight neighborhood. The family was pretty much, if you had family in the neighborhood, you had family every other block.
Right.
You didn't go far those days. You pretty much stood, in the neighborhood. You had Sunday dinners, you had it at your grandfather's, your grandparents' home. Everybody would show up. Everybody knew you by name. You go out. You weren't afraid of anything. And it was run by the local hoods, guys who grew up in the neighborhood. Like the Gallos, had certain areas, they had other guys on Court Street. and they just kept the neighborhood in check. You try not to, do anything wrong in the neighborhood, and if something did go bad, people would run to the local hood. If you want to take a number, they go to the local hood, and you want to make $500 for a dollar bill. And the guys were there to do that. It was a very good neighborhood. It all changed after the Verrazano Bridge was the start of how dismantled. I just think you had, it was a strong Italian neighborhood. There was others, and the same thing happened to others in Brooklyn. But I've seen the one I'm in. What happened?
Sure.
How long you there?
We moved there when my sister was born, in like 92, and eventually, actually, my parents got phased out. It became too expensive for them. They had to move, into Windsor Terrace, but we were there for years. All through
by 92 was starting to get expensive already.
Yeah, no, I know. It was crazy. I mean, when we moved, so we lived on Union at first, and then when we moved to President Street, it was only families in our building, and at least 2 or 3 of them all spoke Italian still, It was just, and kids too, like my sister's good friend who lived in the building, she spoke Italian and English. Our landlord's, brother and his wife, spoke no English at all.
Right.
And,
would still have that
was sort of the norm.
Yeah, no longer. By the 90s, you got the last of it, because by after that, it started changing drastically.
Absolutely.
People got offered a lot of money and you leave, People want to go better places, or they think they're better. And they see big money, and they sell and go. And then they complain. And then they complain they miss the neighborhood. I joke with everybody, we missed the neighborhood, I said, well, you wanted to leave because you wanted to go someplace nicer. Now you want to spend your rest of life telling everybody on Facebook or sitting at a bar or with dinner how you missed the neighborhood. No one told you to leave. No one threw us out of the neighborhood. Nobody came with a gun. No one, forced us. Everybody did a conscious decision that they wanted the money, man. They want money.
I know. It's true. I mean, you mentioned in the beginning of the book, you go through some of the just sort of like landmarks and things. So, you talk about like Mazzola for lard bread and Court Street pastry for pastries and things. And you mentioned Esposito's, the pork store. And, that's like a constant struggle to keep that place, going.
Sure, because you have to keep up with the rents. You got to keep up with the people's taste.
Exactly.
They're still holding out. I know the boys. I know the brothers. They're still holding out. But a lot of places closed because they're rents and selling out. There's a few places still left in the neighborhood. You got a couple of bakeries left, 1 or 2 restaurants, maybe 2 pork stores, but the other 3,700 places are gone.
I know, and then it's like a friggin' American Apparel and a Starbucks opens up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Smith Street has basically become like the city. And it's not bad. I mean, there's nice places on there, but, one thing, before we kind of get a little bit closer into the book, one thing that really struck me, reading your book is the amount of bars that used to be everywhere. And there still are a ton of bars, in Carroll Gardens, South Brooklyn, but, it does seem like back in the day it was like a bar on every block. That was sort of amazing to me.
Yeah, it probably was a bar every other block. There was some kind of pub, some pub or little bar. There was a lot. Everybody drank. Yeah. It was always popular. Drinking was always popular.
Yeah, that's right.
Restaurants and bars.
Frank, as you were saying earlier, your father worked for Joe Gallo, and Joe Gallo is one of the more fascinating figures in mafia history. I've always been fascinated with him, in part because he grew up, just down the block from me, essentially. But he does have, people will know him as Crazy Joe Gallo. The movie The Gang That Can't Shoot Straight is based around the Gallo Crew, and he was he was a larger than life figure. He famously, testified before Congress and, gave some really funny answers and things. But tell the listeners a little bit, who was Joe Gallo? What was the Gallo Crew itself? Paint us a picture.
Well, basically, we were closer to Larry Gallo. Larry Gallo was the boss. And my father being Larry's bodyguard, we were just closer to Larry. Joey was in jail for most of the time. I was young from when I was, he went away in 62, got out 71. So he left when I was, 7 and got back when I was 17. Right. And he was only in the street for a year. So, we were closer with Larry. But the difference between the Gallo Crew, the guys in the Gallo Crew, because you had so many different guys. You had Larry, which was, smart and was, always planning things and, kept his temper down. Then you had opposite Joey, which was, a throwback from 1920. And he was, he wanted to hit everybody and shoot everybody and, and scream. So, the rest of the crew, and then you had a younger brother that would, just following everything and learning what his brothers were doing, his background. Then you had a crew of immigrants, they were different, you had Irish guy, you had Puerto Ricans, we had, Syrians, we had Jewish guys.
I know, it was like a real mix, mix of people. Very surprising.
It was really a big mixture. It was always frowned upon by, the 5 families, they never trusted outsiders except for Sicilians or Italians. But, and this crew was so out there, So,
yeah.
It was so out there from the beginning. And, it just, bloomed to, what it did for the, historically, because it was always in the newspaper, the Gallo family was always in the newspaper. If it wasn't for shooting each other, it was for saving somebody in a fire, or if it was helping New York City on a riots. I mean, they've done a lot of things, It's really crazy how hoodlums were so involved with things. But they were, then you get back to Joey, who was in the street only a year, and he was just a real throwback on gangsters. I mean, he was, the old school, Capone type, just went out there and just want to kill you, So, and of course, he didn't listen, had no fear. He was told many times not to do what he recommended not to do, to go, to places and stuff like that. That's, he should be at. And he had no fear. And he said, nope. So, he was a person to, a strange person to be around, because he was odd. He was odd. Crazy Joe, that's why I call him Crazy Joe. I mean, he just didn't conform to nothing. He had his own way. Whatever was in his mind was in his mind, you couldn't change it. You couldn't, I really personally, knowing Joey for only a year, he was just set in the old school, set in the old ways, and he didn't understand that things change, and then being in jail for 10 years in the prime of his life, it didn't help, jail don't help. Jail, you get more connections and you learn to do different things and meet different people. But the crew was very interesting. I mean, like I said, I stood there until 76, and then we moved on to Manhattan. It was an interesting ride. That's why I wrote the book, because I thought it was, everyone around me thought it was an interesting life. So, that's why basically we did the book. I wasn't no trouble at the time. I don't ever spoke to a police officer or a cop at the time. I don't owe nobody nothing. I don't know nobody's business. Pretty much everybody in the book is historical. The 99.9 are dead. It's just my, me being around them and, personal. Most of it's personal. And that's why I wrote the book. I waited till a few people died before I really came out with the book. And after the last 1 or 2 passed away, there was no one, there was no one to question really anything.
And just, again, for people that are unaware, when Joe Gallo was this like weird kind of like, almost like it's funny, as you were saying, he's this like old school throwback, you know, to like old 1920s gangsters. But then at the same time, you know, people, there's always, he would hang out with all these sort of, like intellectuals and things. He was famous for reading like Sartre when he was in prison. He would hang out with Jerry Orbach and, you know, sort of like, go to these like big fancy dinner parties, like on the Upper East Side. And then he would like go back to Brooklyn.
Joey was very manipulative. Yeah, he knew what he was doing. You know, he played two sides of the candle. You know, being a gangster doesn't make you stupid. And most gangsters are pretty smart. You know, educated. They're just nutty. Their values are different. Doesn't mean that they're not educated. Joey was he played like I say, both ends of the candle. Man, he knew what he was doing. He liked being in the limelight. You know, he spent 10 years in jail. You know, shit goes through your head when you're a tough guy, and you know everybody wants to be acknowledged. And you know, and people do it different ways. You know, when people tend to gravitate to you and put you on a pedestal, you know, it's very hard to walk away from it. So you tend to start sucking it up, and then your mind goes a little crazy. And you know, so he was a lot of people got two faces. You know, you got one face you show to the public, and then you got one face, you know, you do at home. So, so it was just that way, you know. He played games with people around him. Yeah.
And he was also, you know, you write in the book about, you know, when Joe Gallo was in prison, he was like, along with reading, you know, French philosophers and things, he also, built up like an alliance with, Italian and black prisoners at a time when that was not done at all, you know. He was, he hated all of these, like Nazi KKK gangs in prison. People will know he famously, befriended Nicky Barnes, who's a big heroin dealer in Harlem, and allegedly helped him, set up, his own criminal network and showed him how to do it. So he really was this like bizarre, you know, like one of a kind. There's only going to ever be one Joe Gallo out there.
Definitely.
But, you know, definitely nuts, as you said.
Definitely. Well, don't forget, Joe came from a crew before he went to jail. He came from a crew that was, like I said, that was all, very versatile. So being around blacks was nothing to us. We had blacks around us. We had, like I said, Syrians. We had Jews. We had, an Irish guys. We got Puerto Ricans. So to go in jail and sit around with blacks or Puerto Ricans or someone is not unusual for us to do. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it wasn't unusual. And when he made the connection with Nicky, it was only a short time, like I said, between 71 and 72. And you know, the papers and everybody says was in drugs. You know, we never was in drugs at the time. I had no knowledge of any drugs and stuff like that. I know we set up a lot of numbers and number houses with Nicky Barnes and stuff like that, bookmaking and stuff like that. But he turned to Joey on to his connections because he had so many connections besides drugs. You know. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I know. The drug thing. You know, they play on it because that's what Nicky's known for. But there's a lot of other things that were actually done and not that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, too, I mean, it was only a brief period of time before Joe Gallo was gunned down in Little Italy. Anyway.
Yeah.
Frank, give us a little bit of a background, too, because the Gallo Crew was beholden to one of the five families. The Profaci family, which no longer exists now. That's Bonanno. But explain a little bit, who is Joe Profaci? You've got a wonderful style of writing where you get like right to the point, and there's a great, I think it's like the first line of chapter 6 in the book where you're describing the first Gallo-Profaci war, and you just say, straight up, quote, Joe Profaci was an old-time greaseball, and Joey Gallo was getting sick of him. And, it just like sums up who this guy Profaci seemed to be. Who is Joe Profaci, and what ultimately caused this war?
Well, Joe Profaci was old school tough guy that was appointed to the family by Lucky Luciano in 1931-32. So he was head of the one of the five families from the start. but he was very, very rich, and he was very, very greedy. And what he would do, what the Gallows and a few other people didn't like was that he would ask for dues every week, and you had to kick up to him. And it's supposed to be for fun if anybody's got arrested or needed lawyers. And he was very greedy. And what happened was the Gallows got fed up with him. You know, they got fed up of they were young, they were crazy. You know, I keep telling people, you know, it's very hard to keep somebody under wraps when they go and murder people. You can't be too normal or when you go kill people. You know what I mean? Mm. So, you know, they're going killing people. They kill Albert Anastasia, a few other important hits, and then you don't feed the beak, and you know, and that's what happens. And like I said, it's always over money, but it's always over money. And they just got fed up with Joe, and they broke away. They got some other captains and capos in the family that weren't happy either, and they tried to do a coup, and that's what happened. And they wound up breaking away and going on Pleasant Street and going to the First War. And basically, even after the war settled and Profaci died, when they put Joe Colombo, first it was Joe, who the hell was that? That was his brother-in-law. Profaci's brother-in-law that flew out till he died. They were still feuding with him a little bit. But when Colombo got in charge, Joe Colombo, they gave him the family, they settled. But they never stood. They stood independent on Pleasant Street. They did their own thing. You know, it was all smoke and mirrors. You know, they were with them, but they did what they wanted to do. If they had to pick up, they would. If they didn't have to, they wouldn't. They were just playing games, you know, every day. But Joey said that Joey Gallo said not to acknowledge it at all. He said that since the day he went to jail to the day he got out, not to acknowledge Joe Colombo as a boss. You know, so there was a lot of mixed feelings and a lot of stuff secretly going on, you know, like smoke and mirrors, you know, they show one thing and doing another. Yeah, so it was really odd. You know, I was young, you know, for the first war. I came in my oats in the second one. So.
Right, I mean, and then in the second one, it seemed while the crew controlled President Street and controlled those areas, I mean, it wasn't entirely safe. I mean, you talk about you personally getting shot at like at least 2 or 3 times when you're a kid. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah. Well, it was scary, but you know, it happens fast. You know, it's then you realize that you know it's part of what you're doing. But initially, you know, they're not supposed to be shooting at us because we're the young guys, and the young guys are supposed to be really neutral because they don't do that. But they broke they break every rule there is. I think the rules are made to be broken because that's what they do is break rules. So after that, we were pretty, you know, used to it, you know. But it's scary, you know. It's when you don't expect it. Then after you expect it, then you know it's a whole different game. When you're young, you get over things fast. You know, it doesn't. What do you call it? It scares you, but you know, but it's a different kind of scare because you're into life. You know, you get mad scared, not scared to run away scared. It's different. You have to. Like I said, you have to experience or live the life to understand a lot of the stuff, you know, to try to explain something that you don't feel or experience is really hard. You know,
I mean, there's a story you're telling, where I think you're at a bar or club somewhere around there and there's like a shootout and, you know, everyone's panicking, you run inside, people are running outside, everyone's, you know, getting their guns out. And the cops come and whatever, and then you realize that out on the street is just an unexploded grenade. I mean, that was like, I can't believe that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it was a drive-by on Pleasant Street, and the organized crime squad went and chased the car, and another car came down the block and threw a grenade, and it hit the window because we had barbed wire on the windows. Funny, we had barbed wire, it bounced it didn't go off, and then it found it in the street. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. I was sitting in the club. I was sitting in the club having a drink at the time.
Before we kind of dive a little bit deeper into your own personal story on this, just a few kind of historical things I just wanted to kind of get out of the way. There is, famously Joe Colombo was attacked, was shot. And this was, this was like in a big public, venue. This was like in Columbus Circle. Yeah. Columbus Circle. And, again, I had always sort of under the impression that this was Joe Gallo kind of just, doing his thing and wanting to kind of foment some sort of fight. But you actually lay out some interesting stuff as to why it wasn't Joe Gallo. Right. And it does make a lot more sense. Explain that briefly just for the listeners.
Well, I mean, the newspapers, is the one that blew up that was Joe Gallo with the assassination. And then the Columbus would figure it because it was Joey, because, there was, arguing going on. But, why I say no is this. I say this because it's too obvious. Joey and Larry would never sanction something like that because it's too obvious. Two is that my father and Punchy and the guys would have been privy to knowledge of it, and they would have been not walking the streets ready to be picked off, we would have known. If they didn't tell us exactly what's going on, they would have told us, stay home. Or,
right.
One word or two words, not explaining nothing because they don't need to explain to you. And you would have got the idea and you would have stayed home. We were walking around like a bunch of schmucks. Yeah, I don't think so. And I know Larry and them, and it's too obvious, man. And it's not 1920. It's 1972. It's a lot different, and it just don't happen that way. So, right. Like I said, I wasn't privy to it. I just give my view of it. And that's my opinion.
And you say too, I mean, that there were other people possibly involved that wanted to get rid of Colombo and to make it look like that this was Gallo, and again, that's like kind of like, I don't know, like Underworld Crime 101. I mean,
exactly.
Again, you're saying these are smart guys. They can make something look like something that's not quite the real truth of it.
Yeah, well, everyone knows that in this life that Joe Colombo got this favor with Carlo Gambino because he was making such a scene on the newspaper, on TV, going on TV shows and stuff like that. You just don't do that. And Carlo got just tired of it, and he had to be removed. And it was what we know or what we speak about those days was it was done from inside. It was a crew inside, with Gregory Scopper and Carmine Persico and that crew. And they set it up to make it look like it was Joey. It was just like a perfect scenario. Right. Got okayed by Carlos, and it got set up by the Colombo crew, and to make it look like Joey, to send a black guy to do it.
Exactly, right.
So, I mean, so you sit back with a brain, any kind of brain, you see how obvious it is.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I know that, people will know that the shooter, of course, is this young black guy who, had phony press credentials and was able to get very close. And that initially, I think, everyone's, that had to be Gallo because he was so close with, all of his, various black gangs and crews and things like that. But then you kind of, I mean, you just say in the book, it's like, why? Why would you wouldn't be that obvious if he was going to do it? He would have never sent a black guy to do it because it would look too much like him.
Of course, it'd be you're signing what do you call it, a confession.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you do that?
Right, yeah. Well, Frank, as you're saying, you grew up into this life essentially, and your father, Ricky, was he was very close with Larry Gallo. He was his bodyguard. He did all sorts of various different things for him. Give the listeners a little bit of a background. How did you, obviously you're, as you said, born into this, you grew up into this, but when did you kind of start officially, working in some level for the Gallo Crew? I know you were fairly young, which will maybe shock people, or maybe not at all. But you started driving cars when you were what, 13?
13, I started driving. Yeah, I started driving my father around at 13. You need a driver. I was big. I was 6 foot tall, 150, 60 pounds. I looked like I was older. I was mature, and I did all the driving, and that's how I got my beak wet. And then it just grows from there. Then the more trustworthy you get, and the more you get pulled on to do things. And that's, my godfather was Bobby Bongiovanni, so, he needed, somebody to drive around, so I would drive him around. My uncle was Joe Chapani, with another capo in the Genovese family that, he needed to be picked up, and you just get to do all these things, and then, and then you graduate. You graduate. You get smart, you run away, or you graduate to what you're doing. You just go on to the next thing. In my case, I went on to the next thing. As you get older, you get to do more things, and if that's your brain set to do bad things or to do these things that we did, you just go and you just move on to other things. You get your hands into other things. We got into drugs because people came up to an access for it. And being a hoodlum, you don't pass up on making $1. That's what we do.
Right.
I mean, so somebody actually didn't have it. I went and got it. I found out how to get it and got it for the people, and that's how we wound up getting involved.
Yeah, you talk about, protecting weed dealers and things like that, and moving weed around in Brooklyn, the people, as you said, will come to you and ask for help. But, again, it definitely is another time and another era, but, when you were 16 years old, at sort of the height of tensions and things, you said you're always carrying a gun around. It was tense, at times. Also too, it was everyone your age, they were just drinking. It was again, that's like another time and another era,
Well, if you were, not everybody our age, there was a lot of people that was smart, that went to school, they were studious, and they weren't hoodlums, I think don't forget, not every time a kid grows up to be a hoodlum, there's probably more that become, honor students and politicians and scientists and authors than hoodlums. So it's a really, really small, percentage of us that were that young in the bar. You had to be privy to it, and most of the people weren't.
Right.
If there was, a Buffalo 50, maybe you found 3 that was underage that was, into that life. But, it's just tense, if you're in that life, there's things that happen, like I said, they come up to you and ask you to protect them, and you get paid for it. It's 99.9, nothing happens, but if something comes up, you do what you can do, I told a story that we worked both deals. First guy came to me and wanted to pay us, $500 to protect him. I went to the other guys and wanted to give us $2,000. And I told the first guy that you're screwed. Because that's what you do. Yeah. If it was somebody close to us, no. But it was somebody who just wanted help. And we're not here to give discounts. We're here to make money, because that's what it was all about. It always centered about money. Don't forget, I keep on stressing that, because everybody thinks it's blood and honor, and there's no honor and shit. It was money. Money. No,
you said that, you, throughout the book, there are all of these moments where, you talk about these guys that, they're supposed to love one another, and it's this, unshakable brotherhood, and you say that, no, when it came down to it, when the money went in one place or another, that's where these people went. And all of his loyalties and things just meant nothing. You say at one point, a great line, you say, quote, "Money is a great deodorant that can cover up the foulest stench."
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it was all, I've seen a lot of bad things for money, amongst friends. And so did I say in the book, I've seen guys that you grew up with that you would go die with and protect, and then the next day they shoot you. So after that, it's all smoke and mirrors. You're in it because just to make money.
Right.
It's like a job, it's like a job. You can flex a little bit because you're tough and you get a little, recognition and you make money.
Yeah.
Is it really anymore? At one point, that's why so today, in the last 20 years, everybody ratting on each other because they all found out already that it was all for money. I didn't know that. Because when I was young, I didn't know that. I didn't see that until later on. But the guys today, the last 20 years, had no love for each other. It's all bullshit. They just, this is all for money. It's all for money, position, and power. So that's why they killed each other so easily, and that's why they ratted on each other so easily. Because there's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's a lot of words, but nothing there. So. No,
again, when you're in your book, you'll be talking about these things and they seem fun, they seem, not glamorous, but exciting. And then, you have these little moments where you're like, yeah, but then you know what, at the end of the day, this guy was willing to, betray everybody he ever was friends with because there was more money somewhere else. And you have these great little moments too, where this pretty heavy stuff is happening in front of you at a young age, and you have these moments where you say, like, this is not normal. This is not like average behavior. You talk about a guy gets shot and they just, maybe not even pull the bullet out, just stop the bleeding enough that he can move, and then he goes on the lam. You constantly talking about these, you have a great, I'd love you to tell the story for the listeners it's when your dad gets shot, and they're getting the bullet out, and he has to pee. Can you tell that story? Because I think it's a really funny one, but also illustrates this thing.
Yeah, him and another member went to go stick somebody up, and he winds up getting shot in the leg, and he has to get it. He's got to go to the hospital, and they figure to go to the hospital, you're going to get arrested. So they had a doctor on Pleasant Street around the area that they could call on. So they called him up and said that Ricky got shot and they needed his help. And they brought him to the office and they lay him down, and he's bleeding all over the place. And the doctor takes a look at it and sees that a bullet stuck in his bone, in his knee, in his shin of his bone. And he says, "Got to come out." So he takes a chisel and a hammer, a little hammer and chisel, and he breaks the bullet through the shin bone to get it out. And right in the middle of it, my father has to take a piss, and he can't move. So one of the crew members, I think it was a Blast, Albert, had to go hold a piss pot while he peed, then throw it away. And like I said, 5 hours later, before he takes off, they're sitting around, and the big joke was, that Albert had to carry a piss pot. Piss. I mean, they just went on a score. I think they shot the guy. I don't know if they killed the guy. I don't remember offhand right now. He got shot, and he's in all kinds of trouble. Murder involved, and everything involved, and they're joking around like it was the funniest thing in the world was that they had a piss in a little thing, and somebody had to carry it. Like everything meant nothing. It was a joke, And I just sit back and go, "Wow, man, that's not normal," But then again, I wasn't normal either, because when you're stuck in it, you didn't know no different. Speaking now, it's like a Monday morning quarterback. I had time to reflect. I had time to grow up. I can say these things now. But when you're in the middle of it, it seems so real. It seems so right. So it's just so much different if you grow up and get through it, and then you have time to reflect back, and you can see how, and then be privy to being in it, to live the life. It's so much different of a view.
Talk a little bit about you mentioned a few times your grandparents. What was their sort of like take on all of this? Because again, you said your grandfather was never broke a law in his life. You tell a funny story of he wouldn't pick up a penny on the ground because he didn't know whose it was.
That's right.
What was it like? What was their sort of viewpoint on this?
Well, he's my grandfather's a longshoreman. Spoke half English, half Italian. wasn't too knowledgeable what was going around. He didn't pretty care for Rick because he knew from the neighborhood that he was a hood, but he pretty didn't know much. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he thought I was working. Really didn't know that I was really involved much. You know, he knew me as working. So they really had no say so because they really kept him in the blind. You know.
Right.
So he was an old Italian, worked hard, longshoreman, retired, lived to be 95.
Wow.
Didn't like Ricky because he said he was a hoodlum bum, you know, and always told my mother. But otherwise, they hadn't really too much knowledge of it. When I was nice to go stay a lot with them. They took me around a lot, but they really had not much knowledge of it.
And again, I mean, I'm assuming that's a bit more of the norm as well. You know, I mean, it's just sort of not spoken of.
So call who you are. If you're Abbott Anastasia, you're not hiding it because everybody knows Abbott Anastasia. Yeah. But not everybody is Abbott Anastasia or something like that. When you're low key and you're not as famous, and you know, like I said, I tell everybody there's a lot of guys around that the people that the press don't know, and that's, you know, like I go online and they write books about it, and they have things on Facebook about gangsters, and they show pictures of Albert, and they show pictures of Capone. I tell everybody, those are guys that get caught, man. There's a lot of guys around that didn't get caught. They're tough guys. They ran the whole thing. Because they're not caught, you don't know them, doesn't make them, you know, not the best. Everybody just happens to be fixated on or around people to get caught. You know?
Oh no, I mean, when I was growing up there too, I mean, especially on Union Street, I mean, it's like our across the street neighbors, you know, we're you know, all involved in all sorts of things. And it was just, you know, and it was like on the 4th of July, you know, you eat food with them, and it was just sort of, you know, it was just sort of like local color almost, you know, but,
yeah, there was guys that no one knows that were treacherous, that the what do you call it, the public doesn't know about. You know, there's a couple Gallo guys that got 5-10 killings under their belt, that they're really, really, really treacherous. Now, no one knows about them. There's other guys that, you know, Henry Hill makes a book, and he never killed nobody in his life, and he makes books. There's guys that are really, you know, famous in this world, like just, they didn't get caught, and in this world, you gotta get caught to be famous. Otherwise, you're on the low. But people do know that in the life know who they are, you know. But not other people won't know. The public wouldn't know. People from wouldn't know who Louis the Syrian is. Ubella in Midwest. You'll know Louis Ubella from Brooklyn if you're around those days. That's what, you know. That's with anything else. But there's a lot of big guys came through that crew. You know, to Profaci, to Gallo.
Well, you just mentioned Louis the Syrian, who was probably one of my favorite characters throughout your book. He just seemed like such a, you know, just a great guy, even though he was obviously a gangster. Who was Louis the Syrian? Because he's just such a wonderful character to read about.
Louis came up an ex-Marine, you know, was in the service. Don't forget, most of these guys were born in 30, 28, 29, like that. He grew up in a neighborhood with the Gallo brothers and became very close. He became another hoodlum, and he wanted to be in consigliere for the Gallos through his whole time with them. And Louis was the guy you go to if there was any little problems or things had to be done. He's the guy you spoke to, and he was just like a well-mannered, smile on his face, level-headed guy. I mean, I got in trouble many a times, and he would step up and grab somebody, my father or someone, say, leave them alone, let me go speak to him, and he would grab me on the side and say, Frankie boy, nah, don't do it that way, or, you know, everybody else was screaming, yell, and, you know, and he would explain things to you, and you know, in a lot nicer manner. And meanwhile, he killed people, and he was very instrumental. He was feared in the Syrian community. But if you didn't know that, then you would think he's some little smiley guy that smiles all the time. Yeah. but he was, loved by everyone. I mean, there was no one ever said any word about Louis the Syrian. He was one of the guys who got shot in the Second War. And he didn't last too long. I think he lasted a year or two after that. Got cancer and died. He was from the both. Yeah, I think about 2 years he lasted after he got shot. No one dying. But these are things that no one would know, because, like I said, you have to be in it, know it. There are a lot of characters there. War Musical was a character. I mean, he was a rebellious, rebelled against everything. You're not supposed to have mustaches and beards. I mean, and he would wear one every day until he got the blast, or Joey would yell at him and say, "Get that damn thing off your face." And he would laugh and smile. We used to drink all night, and with the big pot smokers. Like the 70s were an explosion with early 60s, 80s, 70s with pot. So they were all big pot smokers and heavy drinkers, and it's a crazy time. But they're unique. Everyone's unique in their characters, That's why I thought the President Street guys were very unique. Not that they're different than other bad crew guys, but I don't know everybody else. I just knew them, and I saw how unique everyone was, in their own way.
Actually, I wanted to ask you that, because, and I assume this is more just of that time era, but do a lot of mobsters smoke weed? Because you mentioned it quite a bit, that like everybody, it was just sort of done. And you talk about your godfather Bobby Darrow. He'd smoke weed every day.
that whole crew smoked pot. The whole crew.
Really? Okay.
I think every one of them, every young guy did.
Right.
Young. I'm talking about the older than us, but the young guys. We're the babies. But the middle guys, not the original crew from 60, but the guys who came in 68, they'd be, 65 now or 70. That crew. They were, that's what they do. Smoke, drink, and smoke pot. It was the thing to do. That's why they called them the Mod Squad. That was how they got the expression the Mod Squad. Because Joey called them the Mod Squad, because they were all bell bottoms and flared pants, and they were smoking pot and drinking, a whole different world when Joey got out of jail.
Right, everyone had long hair, it's just a long sideburns style.
Yeah, long sideburns, a whole different world. Joey went in 62, it was old school, you know what I mean? And came out with a bunch of guys that looked completely different. And they were all killers and hoods and madmen.
Right. Yeah. Frank, we're coming up towards the commercial break, so we'll and I want to get into some other stuff in the second hour, particularly the sort of later career within the Gallo Crew. But we would be remiss. We're talking about all these sort of colorful characters within the Gallo Crew. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about Mondo. Who is Mondo? And talk about the lion as well that was in his basement.
Who is Mondo? Mondo was a dwarf that was born on Pleasant Street. That his mother had a little restaurant, a little cafe called Longshoreman Inn, that was related to Frankie Liano, which is Punchy, which was a gangster, and he was like became a mascot of the Gallows, and he was just he would take numbers, and he would take care of when we had the line on the block, he would take care of the line. He would have a dog named King, and he would put the numbers in his collar, pick up numbers. He would host the club and the coffee, and people had meetings. He became, a symbol around Joey. He was really well liked and loved by everyone, and it just became a symbol because, a lot of things with the Gallows were documented, and everything becomes symbol, especially with that movie, the guy that couldn't shoot straight. That it was a joke of a movie, but it did put them on the map with the midget and the lion and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, and again too, I mean, this is like a real lion that they kept in the basement to intimidate people. And you said, I mean, they walk around the neighborhood with this lion, right?
Yeah, because it was small cub. When they're enough, it grew fast. So this whole thing happened within 6 months. From a little cub until it got too big, and Armando couldn't hold it no more. Couldn't take care no more. We had to get rid of it. But it was there for a short time. I think 6 months, maybe a little more, but not much. As long as it took for that cup to go fast and big. Whatever it takes time it takes, it had to go. And yeah, we would walk outside with it. It was calm. It was contained. But not too big, especially with a dwarf midget holding on to it.
Yeah,
it's hot.
And just tell the story too about when it's like a whole bunch of people. Albert Gallo, Chico, Mooney, all these guys, they all get arrested. They're in a police lineup, and the detective questions Armando. What does he say?
He asks Mondo if he saw the shooters, and Mondo says he couldn't see nothing if only thing he can recognize is if he saw their belts. Of course, he's a midget looking at his vest. I actually told that to the arrested officer, the detective. They were characters. They had no fear. They were characters. No doubt about it. They were characters. They really were. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that comes across too, this like no fear. I mean, they didn't act like any other, like the cliches of like movies and things like that. This wasn't like The Godfather or Goodfellas or anything, that nature. This was really, as you said, it's just, it's
Mean Streets. If you see the movie Mean Streets, it was more streety, not this upper echelon type stuff. It was more street. Goodfellas, everybody's dressed 25 a day in $10,000 suits and like that. I don't know. It's done. It's done. I mean, if you're going out, otherwise you're out working. I don't know what you're doing, but you're out working. I don't know if it's go stealing or hijacking. You're working. You don't have Armani suits on. So exactly. Hollywood's out. But I felt Mean Streets was the closest to street guys. Without being up echelon. The working guy in a crew that actually makes it happen.
Frank, we're coming up towards the break. Quickly, before we pause for a few minutes, where can people go to get a copy of your book?
I think the best place is Amazon.com. Or you can go to President Street Boys, because I have some other stuff there, other books there. PresidentStreetBoys.com or Amazon.com. President Street Boys going up Mafia.
Okay, excellent. Well, great. So, I think in the second hour, I think we'll cover some of the later time, with the Gallo Crew, how you eventually sort of left all of that. And I'd also love to talk about, your time with, working for Screw Magazine.
Right.
That seems to be a big chunk of your, career within the Gallo, family. That's like we could probably do a whole episode just on all of that. We've still got a few minutes here before the break comes up. Maybe just kind of set it up for the listeners. I mean, you're sort of transitioning, through the Gallo family. What's it like just as like a young kid as you're slowly kind of moving up the ranks?
What you do is you get just more responsibility. They just pull on you to do more things. There don't have to be bad things, but you have to do more things. You might have to drive more. You might have to go pick something up. You might have to just go somewhere. You get to meet different people. You're privy to certain things. You can pick up numbers now, or you can do something on your own and earn, and without have to being for them. You're going for yourself. You have to turn in, but but you can start doing things on your own. So that's basically what. And then being with that crew and stuff like that, you get a certain amount of respect, and it gets a little easier. That's how people come to you. If they know you're there and you're liked, that's what happens. That's how you get to move on and move up.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break right now, and we will be back with Frank Dimatteo.
I like very much.
Radio. You're an American institution. American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of micro plant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenates, invigorates, and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
Yo, what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
What about show business? Show business, completely dishonest, corrupt, and full of shit, but in a nice way. Plenty of expensive drugs and perverted sex. If you're going to be full of shit, might as well enjoy your work. Then you have the media. Not just the news media, let's include them all. The media are almost literally exploding with bullshit because they're located right at the crossroads of all the other bullshit. The media are made up of equal parts advertising, politics, business, public relations, and show business. These people are sitting right at bullshit junction. There's enough bullshit in the media for Texas to open a branch office. And you still have enough left over to start 2 law firms and a Christian bookstore.
What has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Provide us with free education?
Well, that's obviously effective, but apart from reversing the dumbing down of America...
All the information they provide is free?
What about the free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, man?
Exploiting commonplace corruption?
They help vulnerable people who don't have a voice?
Bringing light to important information nobody else does.
Or they never censor, hang up, or cut off their guests? Well, that's no fun, is it?
Oh, they created a fantastic alternative media source during an era of bad, manipulative, and infiltrated mainstream and alternative media shows and scam.
Okay, well, apart from the free education, free information, free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, exposing commonplace corruption, helping vulnerable people without a voice, bringing light to important information nobody else does, and creating a fantastic commercial-free alternative media source in a sea of bad, manipulative mainstream and alternative media shills and scum, what has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Donate to American Freedom Radio today. No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio. offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are just joining us right now in the second hour, we have been speaking with Frank Dimatteo, the author of The President Street Boys Growing Up Mafia. And we covered quite a bit in the first hour, not only talking about the Gallo Crew, but also talking about Frank, his sort of early stages working for the Gallo Crew. Now, Frank, I wanted to kind of expand a little bit, because there's a huge part of the Gallo's income and a huge part of their operation was in pornography, and particularly through Screw Magazine. And the Gallo Crew had a deal with Al Goldstein, who was, of course, the founder of Screw Magazine, and this was a huge part of your own life as well, was working there. So explain a little bit, what was Screw Magazine, who was Al Goldstein, and what was your connection with it?
Al Goldstein and Jim Buckley started a sex paper in, I think, late 68. One of the first newspapers that dealt with adult sex. At the time, they were having trouble, morals and sanctions. They were having trouble getting the magazine industry. So one of the distributors knew one of the guys from the Gallows, and he was telling him the problem. So Peter Greek and Bobby Bongiovanni approached Al Goldstein and offered to distribute the magazine, and he was desperate to get it out properly, and we wound up getting it put out. But first the other distributor had to be let known that they weren't distributors no more, because they weren't doing a good job. So, we had to do some persuading. A couple of trucks broken up, a couple of guys get hit, and they walked away, and we wound up being the distributor from 1970 to 2004. So
more or less the whole career on Screw Magazine. Certainly the important years. And your father, Ricky, was actually he ran Astro News Distributors on 8th Street in Brooklyn, which was the main distributor of Screw Magazine. So he was, right there at the forefront of that. What was it like? What was your particular job when you were working for Screw Magazine?
I started as a helper. On the truck, carrying bundles. And then I worked my way up to doing a route, because that's where the money is. And I did a route for, 25 years.
Wow.
And, I did a route for 25 years. In between doing all the crazy stuff, we would take 2 days a week and go deliver screw. That's all it was, 2 days a week. And then 1 day in the office, but 2 days in the street, just delivering and picking up money. The thing, it sold crazy at those days, in the old days. And then we wound up getting 25 other magazines, newspapers that started coming out. Then we wound up getting magazines, and then we wound up getting other stuff. So it grew bigger and bigger. It grew bigger and bigger. And we worked 2 days a week, and that's how we made a lot of legitimate money. Of course, that was all.
No, go
we
ahead.
Didn't show it all. I mean, we didn't claim it all, but it was all legitimate.
And I mean, people may not know, but I mean, Screw Magazine was huge. I mean, there would be no Hustler, there'd be no, it wasn't Playboy, that's for sure. But it was it was a very influential pornography magazine. Newspaper.
It was raw. It was raw. It showed stuff that was never seen before to the public. It was selling 100,000 copies a week at one time. That's a lot.
Which is a huge amount in New York. I mean, it's astronomical. I mean, you talk about making deliveries to the newsstands twice a day sometimes.
Yeah, we would have truck out 2 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
They would just go back. That's why they didn't want to work the other 2 days, because everybody around was hooligans. We picked our time, but we had to get it done. So we would do all the major stops, and then there was hundreds and hundreds of other stops that we subbed out. With the Archie Gordon, his guys. But the bulk of the stuff we did ourselves. The guys that took 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 newspapers, we would do ourselves. So we would work around the clock for the 2 hours, for the 2 days, and then take off. But it was seldom. There wasn't that many returns. I mean, you would drop off, and then go pick up money.
Right.
And that's how it was. Just pick up money. Because at the time it was such a hot item. Everybody was, inquisitive to see this magazine that was doing things that no one ever thought done in the public. It was always underground. I can't tell you what was going on because we were on the air. But otherwise, for the time it was pretty raw. Now it's nothing, but,
Yeah, right. I know, exactly. Right. Give a little bit back. Like, what was Al Goldstein like? He is this bizarre, crazy character. People, I think, in New York and definitely anyone that's looked into pornography will know who he is. But who was Al Goldstein? What was he like?
Oh, he was a paranoia, schizophrenic, crazy man that would smoke pot and what do you call it? Over sex crazed, vulgar, but he was smart and he knew what was going to work. So that's Goldstein. Not well liked at all.
Yeah, he doesn't sound like a fun person to be around. Oh, did I lose you there, Frank? Oh well, we might have lost Frank Dimatteo there. Actually during the break, Frank was saying that he's I think he's out somewhere with his wife right now, and his phone was on low battery, and the call might drop. So I think that was it. We think we've lost Frank Dimatteo just when we were about to kind of get into sort of how he got out of the mafia. And of course, all the good questions I was saving for the second hour. I was gonna talk maybe if he anything on Al Sharpton and his time informing on the mafia. So hopefully we'll be able to get Frank back on the show, maybe just for an hour, a half an hour, and we can talk a little bit more about his time and anything else. But this is what happens with live radio, and when you're doing this on the fly, your cell phone will die, and then that's the end of that. Well, again, I encourage people if they want to read some more about this or learn some more about this, to get a copy of Frank's book, The President Street Boys Growing Up Mafia. And I actually got this book thanks to all of my lovely subscribers on Patreon. This was this along with a Wendy Paintings book on Timothy McVeigh, which I've mentioned before. I bought both of those through some of the money that I received on Patreon. So if you want to support my work and get more guests such as Frank Dimatteo on the show, then you can always go to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond, and you can become a subscriber for as little as $1 a month. And we've got a brand new bonus podcast up right now, talking about Wayne Barrett, which definitely go out and check if you haven't seen or listened to it. And of course, also Brian Heiss has extended his documentary, so you can, if you subscribe at any level, $1, $2, $3, $5, you until February 15th, you'll be able to watch Brian's documentary on OJ and Mark Furman. So, lots of wonderful things happening for the subscribers. So please continue to subscribe, or think about subscribing if you have not already. But anyway, what do we got going here? What are we going to talk about right now? If people have not already listened to my episode on Jeffrey Epstein, I definitely encourage people to check that out. There's a lot of material in there that I don't see really being talked about in other places in the alternative media. And, you know, I just sort of, I keep getting, questions about this character George Webb, who makes these, he makes YouTube videos and is, you know, he mentions Epstein, somewhat in his videos, you know, which are about, I don't know, DynCorp and vaccines and the Clintons and organ trafficking and, you know, this is like the new largest conspiracy that we've ever heard of. But I bring it up only because people keep asking me what my opinion of him is, what I think of him. And I kept seeing it, you know, in relation to some of the Pizzagate stuff. And I did check out some of his things initially, but, you know, I was just like busy, didn't have the time. And then I saw that he, you know, talks about Epstein. So I thought, okay, let me see, you know, what he's got. And I guess he brings up Epstein because of the, reports or allegations that, his helicopter and I think also one of his private planes is actually registered by DynCorp. I've seen this floated around a bit and I need to do a little bit more digging on that because I personally haven't seen anything like concrete linking this. Now that's not to say that it doesn't exist out there, you know, and it very well might, and it's not inconceivable, I suppose, that Epstein would have planes that were registered by DynCorp or I mean, I've seen some things that it's like the State Department as well. It's totally possible, you know, but I haven't seen anything yet that's made me think that. So if anyone has that sort of stuff out there, let me know. Of course, and this is, you know, like Ed Opperman says on the show all the time, don't just send me a YouTube video. You know, like don't send me a George Webb YouTube video where he talks about this. Give me, you know, send me some documentation. But again, I bring this up because he mentions Epstein, you know, so I always pay attention to, you know, researchers and journalists and stuff when they're talking about Epstein because you always want to learn something new. And, you know, he curiously gets certain, like, basic facts sort of wrong or you know, misinterprets things. He talks very kind of like, this is the, you know, the complete story. I know everything about Epstein and his, you know, dealings in the Balkans and Eastern Europe, and this is how these, you know, orphanages were set up and blah, 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 and they're trafficking this and that, but I don't see anything like, where are you getting that? Are you just, theorizing, which is fine if you want to theorize. As I mentioned in the recent episode I did on Epstein, I don't like to theorize, when it comes to this. I like to, you know, I will present certain things that, you know, might be construed as being a theory or whatnot, but, you know, I don't really like to kind of go off on tangents and things like that. So that makes me a little suspicious of, this guy. Not that he's like some evil plant or something or, you know, a disinfo agent, but just that he's getting a lot of people very interested in some of this stuff. And, you know, I don't know why he's getting certain basic things about Epstein wrong. He also continually points to Conchita Sarnoff as some sort of, you know, definitive source on Epstein, yet he doesn't seem to mention that Conchita Sarnoff's alleged, NGO or foundation, you know, this advocacy group for trafficked victims, he fails to mention, in what I've seen, that, her lawyers for that are the same lawyers that got Epstein off on all of these things. Again, and this is, you know, a law firm very close, to, Obama as well. That, you know, is just like, I don't know, he just doesn't, you know, and I always find that people always point to Conchita Sarnoff, this woman who wrote this book and then disappears, you know? She's not doing anything. She's not talking about Epstein right now. I admittedly have not read Trafficking, which is Conchita Sarnoff's book, or Filthy Rich, which is the James Patterson and, Jim Connolly's book. I do intend to pick them up at some point, but I don't trust Conchita Sarnoff for a second. And when people are constantly pointing to her and, you know, like the one interview she did for Sean Stone, I mean, who cares? Like, I mean, it just, and that she has this foundation that's supposed to help traffic victims, but the law firm that represents her is one of the law firms that Jeffrey Epstein used. She's also, you know, her publisher and her literary agent to Victor Obtrosky, his former Mossad agent. I mean, you know, these are all the things that I know that, you know, it's like alarm bells in the alt media and stuff. And this is like kind of along the lines of what this guy Webb talks about on some of his videos, but he doesn't seem to either know or doesn't want to talk about when it relates to Epstein. And so, you know, that's just interesting. I only bring it up because people keep kind of asking me, you know, and he's becoming this sort of like new, I don't know, poster child for researchers out there. And I don't know. There's something about him that just doesn't add up. I mean, I was listening to an interview he did recently with someone, and he says like, yeah, you know, I spent all morning talking with Cy Hirsch. I don't think you did. B, Cy Hirsch, this is the, you know, Mr. Deep State stooge. I mean, this guy is, you know, I don't know. I don't really trust much of what Seymour Hersh does. I mean, he basically just plays damage control for the Democrats. You know, and it was just this like weird offhand way that he said it. And that's the thing. He makes a lot of those sort of offhanded comments in some of his videos, where it's just, it doesn't add up for me. There's just something that's off about it, something that doesn't quite add up for me. And it feels weird. You know, it doesn't feel, genuine and stuff. And I think a lot of what he's doing is, you know, he's kind of getting back to this like information overload, conspiracy catnip stuff, where he's got these really complicated slides that he puts up in his videos. And it's just like, it's like a camera pointed at his computer screen with him, you know, pointing at different things. And there's these like complicated slides with different pictures of people and, you know, DynCorp and trafficking, and he's got arrows pointing to this and that, and he's sort of talking and pointing at these, you know, people and you know, like newspaper clippings and things like that. And it looks kind of impressive, you know, and it does sort of tickle your conspiracy bone. You know, it's like the endorphins that get released when, I don't know, the first time you watch like a 9/11 truth video and you start to say, oh my God, I can't believe this. And that sort of excitement that you get, he definitely, I think, appeals to that, or is playing on that, you know, not necessarily, again, not in a nefarious way. That's just his style or whatever. And it does get people, you know, excited. It gets them, you know, interested in it. And it's very easy when you kind of lull somebody into this, you know, this is this big conspiracy with all these people that are all intimately connected and this, that, and oh my God. It does convince people that everything they're hearing is the truth, you know? It does, you know, you don't have to show you don't have to show your work as how you came up with the answer to this equation. It's just, that's what it is. That's what it has to be. So, you know, I don't know. There's something about it that's a little bit odd, that just doesn't add up. And I would be wary. I know that, you know, it's like he's, especially too when you have this guy who everyone is, you know, I've gotten things, you should talk to George Webb. I've seen other people, you know, comments on other people's websites and things that, oh, you gotta get Webb on there, Webb, you know, he's got all the answers. And I do think, obviously, DynCorp is a horrible company. There were, of course, this is, I think, back in, the mid 2000s, I want to say Cynthia McKinney, maybe, you know, questioned, Rumsfeld on allegations of DynCorp involved in, human trafficking and things like that. And again, they are a mercenary firm. It's not, you know, it's It's not out of the realm of possibility at all that groups like that are involved. But I do think that, again, sometimes it's these large, overarching conspiracies where everyone is involved. They are fun, okay? Sometimes they are true. But it's very easy to get really wrapped up in them, and, you know, you start making connections that are there in that there's some sort of tangible connection between person A and person B and company C, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all part of this dark cabal of organ thieves and mercenary firms and, you know, the Clintons bumping people off. You know, in the episode I did fairly recently on the Epstein stuff, you know, I don't think you need something that huge and organized to achieve, you know, a sex trafficking enterprise. I think Epstein could have been involved in something like that, and very well may have, maybe with some of the, you know, blackmail things like of that nature. But, you know, I think the more I'm peeling the onion of Epstein, yes, he is connected to some very powerful, influential people, and there's serious questions about, you know, some of his friends, you know, posing with, you know, certain women and girls that were under, you know, Epstein's control, and that, you know, like there's John Brockman, who's the head of the Edge Foundation or whatever. You can look him up. There's a picture of him and Sarah Kellen, who is, you know, one of the top procurers of girls for Epstein, and she was, you know, in charge of his sex schedule and his travel arrangements. Sarah Kellen flew with Epstein, you know, constantly, if not every single time. And, you know, he's posing with her and Cindy Lopez, who's another young woman who is, you know, on a lot of these flight manifests with Epstein. You know, what is going on there? But I don't know. There's something about this case. The more I look into it, the more I just see a, you know, sick, deranged maniac who has an insatiable urge and desire to have sex constantly with, you know, women, girls from the age of 13 to 25. Now, how did he fill this void? Very simply, you know, he had a network of people that would go out and find, you know, young girls. Like, for instance, in Palm Beach, they targeted lots of poor, you know, underprivileged girls in high school. It's not that difficult. You know, it doesn't need to be this huge, you know, he doesn't need DynCorp to, you know, ship in girls from Kosovo to, you know, to fill his need. Epstein, while I think was probably involved in something like that, you know, you look at the Jean-Luc Brunel and some of the allegations that, you know, came out against him, you know, flying in all these girls from France and things. Yeah, that's why. And how did he get passports? But I think we need to kind of step back a little bit from the massive conspiracies. Because it's, you know, you can kind of get lost in the weeds amongst that, when I think a lot of this is on a much more simple scale. And also, I think it's a lot easier to nail these people when we start looking at this on a simple, you know, criminal level. You know, you could build this amazing case, but let's be honest, you go up in front of a judge and you start talking about DynCorp and organ thieves and vaccines to, you know, sterilize the population, and Hillary Clinton using her foundation to, you know, launder drug money and, you know, assassinate people and all these things. I'm not saying that this isn't true and that we shouldn't be pursuing this. You're not going to get anywhere with that in a legal stance, in an actual, you know, legal proceeding or anything like that. It's just not going to happen. Whereas You look at this recent case with Jane Doe 43, it's very simple. It's a fairly straightforward case. What is she really alleging? That she was recruited into this sex trafficking enterprise, and that basically she was lied to continually and coerced into having sex with Epstein, who continued to promise to get her into FIT and pay for her tuition. That's fairly simple. That's like your run-of-the-mill pedophile behavior. It's not this massive international global conspiracy involving everybody on the planet. So, I think again, I think we're like through these sort of like waves in conspiracy culture where it's, that we're back into that. Now it's like everything has got to be this huge, big, massive conspiracy, and there's all these moving parts, and everything is wheels within wheels within wheels. Yes, of course that exists, but I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's really the way to grow this movement, if it even exists anymore. It's like more and more I keep seeing this complete disregard for reality going on, particularly when it comes to Donald Trump. I mean, what does this guy have to do? Seriously. We're about to invade Iran. And everyone is just sort of like, well, okay, that's fine. I don't really care about that. What I do care about is, the Clinton Foundation and DynCorp and all these things. And I'm not, again, I don't take this as, that's stupid or we shouldn't be looking into it. But, when, Michael Flynn is talking about that Iran is on notice, that should pique our interest. This should worry people out there in the alternative media who have been trumpeting that the Great Orange Leader is some sort of, peacenik who wants to stop the war in Syria, and he's really against NATO and global imperialism and all that sort of bullshit that they keep spewing with this guy. No, not at all. I mean, this is like not the case whatsoever. And the silence when it comes to Iran is, deafening. It's really shocking. Nobody wants to. They're fine with talking about how wonderful Russia is and how it's just great. We fixed everything in Syria and everything is going to be wonderful again. And the globalists have all lost. And the cultural Marxists are on the ropes and whatnot. But making Iran glow in the dark, totally fine. Not on our radar at all. And again, not to toot my own horn, but I said, one of my predictions early on for 2017 was that Yemen would again become this hotspot. And what do we see? We see a Saudi frigate allegedly being attacked by Houthi rebels. Houthis, the Yemenis rebels, they do have some, sort of tacit backing from Iran. Although I do find a lot of that is a little overblown. I don't quite buy that, this is just like an Iranian proxy force. Like, I think that's just like, again, it's selling short what the Houthis have been doing for years and years and years in Yemen. But look at that. We've got, Yemen, popping up there. We've got this botched raid in Yemen. Again, that it's not even on people's radar. It's just like it didn't happen. And admittedly, I didn't even realize that it had happened, when it did. Because again, I wasn't paying attention to that because you're so focused on all the other kind of crappy shit, that's going on. It's like, what's the new, hashtag or, we all need to get rid of Uber, quickly. And maybe I'll just talk about that a bit, cause I was discussing this with some friends the other day, and, I had a friend of mine, and, she was saying, oh, well, you gotta, no Uber, Amazon is okay because they, them and, Google and all these other companies, they've written a letter condemning Trump. And it's like, so now we're supposed to like Amazon? This is still the same company that's building, a cloud-based service for the CIA. This is still the company that treats its workers horribly. Amazon is still the company that controls the Washington Post, controls what you buy online, it controls entertainment, more and more. In my opinion, Amazon is way scarier than Google is, or is on par with the terrifying, aspects of Google. And, all the while, it's funny, and all these terms like deleting Uber, as if you needed an excuse to delete them. They were a horrible company before the Muslim ban. Okay? Just because that they're supporting Trump doesn't mean that, suddenly now we have to have this moral outrage. And I know, I'm all for people, protesting, and I think it's good that people are pissed off and are saying something. It is nice to see that Donald Trump just isn't like waltzing through, his whole presidential career. I mean, again, it's like been 2 weeks, and it seems like a fucking eternity. But he's definitely, Donald Trump is losing sleep over this. I saw a recent press conference or, some signing that he did. I mean, he looked just like he was not enjoying any of this, which is great. That's good. And again, not to disparage the people protesting. And I hate saying this because it makes me sound like, one of these like right-wingers that's, hates the liberals. But there is a point there where where were you when we were bombing all these countries? It's just like the Muslim ban is horrible. And it's just, it is like a first step towards a scary, new world order. But, you didn't really seem to care when we bombed the shit out of all these countries. That just, and again, even if you did, the perception that you're putting out there is that, well, when Obama bombed them, that was fine and we weren't going to care about it. But now when Trump is banning them, suddenly, we're all up in arms. And, and then to that end, these right-wingers that bring that up as if, they have some sort of moral superiority, it's like, okay, fine. So you hated it when Obama was, bombing them, but you're secretly fine with Trump banning them. I mean, it's still like, it doesn't make anyone, it's not like it doesn't outweigh the other thing. I mean, you're still racist, and again, if it was Trump bombing them, you would probably all be fucking silent on it. So, don't play this like, it was moral superiority here. You don't care. It's not like they're not talking about the, illegality of banning people, okay? They're just talking about, well, Obama bombed them, so that makes him worse. It's okay for Trump to ban them, or set up a database for Muslims. It's fine for Trump to do that. It's fine for Trump not to add Saudi Arabia to that list, or Qatar, or any of these other places, because Obama bombed them. So it's fine. It's okay. That's worse than what Trump is doing. But yeah, obviously killing people, is arguably worse than, preventing them from coming into America. But don't try and get all high and mighty about this, because it's just so shallow. It's so stupid. And ultimately, please don't you don't really care about these countries, the vast majority of these, right-wing dickheads. You don't really care. You just care because it was a black guy that was doing it. So that makes it seem, and again, to be contrarian, everyone has to be so contrarian nowadays. So, that's it. Whereas this disgusting, fat, overweight, orange blob of a man with a tiny little dick and hands, whose own doctor admits he's taking, hair growth supplements right now, he's great though. He's fine. He can do no evil. Bomb Iran? Go for it, man. Whatever. Start war in the South China Sea? Great idea. I'm all for it, not a problem. The damn Chinese, they gotta learn their place in the world. It's so transparent now. And so I don't know. I'm kind of going off on all sorts of tangents here. But I don't know. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I'll tell you this much right now. Like, I mean, 3 weeks into Trump, it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do 4 years. I don't know how I'm going to do 4 months of this. And my hope is that, I don't know, something, my hope is that it will just sort of like, not die down, but that it'll just become easier. But it really is just like every single day, it's like a battle for sanity out there. Maybe that's the goal. I mean, there's an interesting theory that Mark Galeotti has floated around, and Mark Galeotti is, let me just take a sip of coffee here. Mark Galeotti, he's sort of like the co-host of the Power Vertical podcast, which is, an RFERL podcast, that is very, very good, highly recommend. I mean, it is obviously, it is what the CIA and NATO, want you to hear. And Brian Whitmore, who's the host of it, is an absolute psycho. Banned me or blocked me on Twitter instantly when I said something he didn't like. But Mark Galeotti is generally the voice of reason on that show. He also writes in Moscow Shadows, which is a very good blog talking about Kremlin watching and stuff. Mark Galeotti is very knowledgeable about the FSB as well and espionage, things of that nature. But Mark Galeotti has been sort of talking about, every time they bring up Trump and Putin and this sort of alleged relationship between the two of them, Mark Galeotti has constantly said that it's not so much about Putin, it's not so much about Trump being a Manchurian candidate, because I don't think that's true. That is definitely some sort of interference that the CIA is sort of cooked up. And I don't even think that the CIA meant to the perception that Pissgate is this fake news that, oh, look, we, again, the right wingers all like, oh, look, you see, they're doing the fake, they're so terrible at fake news. It's so transparent. Oh, it's a fake news, fail for them. We've caught them. Pissgate. No, be real. The CIA is not that stupid. You are, if you believe that. But I think they put that out there on purpose. It's just to create noise. It's to create noise. It's so that some people will now always and forever think of Trump as loving golden showers. It's a great, it just sort of adds fuel to the fire. It's something for everyone to obsess over, nitpicking it and things like that. And really, I think what it's all about is just, it's just to piss off Trump. It's to have that be a story. Okay. It's so that, at some point he's going to get a question asked about Pissgate, or Sean Spicer will have to talk about Pissgate or something. And it's just to create the illusion that Russia is in complete control of Donald Trump, because ultimately the CIA is fine with Donald Trump. Okay. And that's why Donald Trump came, on his hands and knees groveling to the CIA his first day in office. He knows who his puppet masters are. And again, Rex Tillerson this guy is CIA all over. Don't give me any bullshit like drain the swamp. I mean, they've got their CIA guy in there, and nothing has really changed. But they do hate his perceived, at least, or his tacit Russia loving. So they will do little things like Pissgate in order to just sort of muddy the waters and whatnot. But anyway, Mark Galeotti has stated his belief that Putin's real strategy for supporting these different leaders, many of which are more on the right wing side, like Marie Le Pen and other things. But of course the Russians liked the leftists in Greece for a brief period. But they tend to like these more right wing politicians who talk a great game about hating NATO and those sort of things. Is more about creating chaos domestically for those places than actually having any sort of grand alliance. And at first I wasn't sure about that idea, although I did think it was an interesting aspect. And I've talked about it before. I think on Porkins' Great Game, me and Christoph had sort of debated this idea. But now, it seems like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what this was all about. You know, this isn't really about Putin and Trump getting along or anything like that. Because ultimately, again, let's be realistic. For all of this, bullshit about Putin, wanting to work, bilaterally with the U.S. to create peace and to destroy NATO and the bankers and just go free the world. No. Okay? Superpowers don't act like that. Be realistic. I mean, again, they're just divorced from the reality of geopolitics. That's not how superpowers work and operate. They want to be the sole power. They want to be the one that dictates where power is going and coming from. They don't want to work with somebody, they want to work with somebody only in as much as it benefits them. Okay? So all of this nonsense, like we've got this wonderful ally now in Putin who's going to save us all. You're kidding yourselves. You're living in a fantasy world. That's not how it works. What does Putin have right now? He's got a fucking moron in the Oval Office who really, it's like he can't go a day without screwing something up. Again, it's like the political gaffes. I guess just learned about Frederick Douglass. It's like this botched raid in Yemen the military is investigating him. Okay? They're looking into this botched raid. This is, again, the military that, every veteran out there, every military official loves me, they're just huge support, they're the best. Well, they didn't think that was so great. There is chaos at home right now. It's like the left or the sort of like, the phony left, the sort of like Democrat left. They're all up in arms. They're protesting everything. Okay, that's fine. I think it's, obviously, that's good. We should protest and whatnot. But where are you ultimately going with this? I don't know. And at some point, too, it's like, protests are great, but, we need to also kind of, come up with a tangible solution here. The right wing is just becoming more right wing, more angry, and pissed off. And, they've, the way that the left felt like they had their guy in office with Obama, now the right wing, we got, our racist old white guy in office again, so we're good. We don't have to worry. The Muslims will also, they'll be deported, and, the gang members, aka, black and Hispanics, they'll be put in their place as well, and it'll all be great for us, because he's gonna bring back all these jobs and whatnot. It's the same thing. It's just, again, it's the exact same thing that we were all bitching about when Obama was there. And I think ultimately Putin is winning then. Because everyone here, there's just chaos at home. That's the same thing. That's why he wants, he supports Brexit or things like that. That's why he likes Marine Le Pen. Because he knows if Marine Le Pen, God forbid she wins, right? But even if she doesn't win, she's doing better and better. She's creating a groundswell of support and turning on a lot of people that are pissed off and angry. And that creates more chaos at home domestically, which ultimately allows Putin to do whatever he wants to do. This is like geopolitical chess 101. I don't understand how, Putin is not out there to make the world a safer place or again, only in as much as Russia becomes the dominant political force. Now, that being said, of course, I don't like NATO as the dominant political force. I don't like the U.S. as the dominant, political force that gets to dictate all of these things. But why is Russia any better? Again, I don't know. I thought at one point, in my more naive days in the alternative media, I thought we hated all of these powerful governments. I thought we were kind of all opposed to the state as having this omnipotent power over all of us. Just because it's the Russians doing it, suddenly we're supposed to like this? We're supposed to agree with this? I mean, what happened to that? What happened to that idea of fuck all of these politicians, fuck all of these power sources. They're all ultimately corrupt and evil. Again, it's like if Russia became the dominant political force, what do you think Goldman Sachs is going to go somewhere? They're going to go there, okay? And then it's just going to be, it's the same thing. Wall Street will just move to Russia, and all of these people will be there. And then who's going to be the bad guy then? I mean, I don't know. It really is like I got to get Aaron Franz on the show to kind of talk about this, because it really seriously strikes me as like this magical spell has been cast over society right now. There's some sort of deeper meaning or deeper thing going on. It's in the psyche of the American people, because and the globally, because there's lots of other people out there who I used to have respect for, and some Americans, some not, and this love affair with Donald Trump. I mean, it is like, what happened? Have you been put under a spell, or have you been brainwashed? Something is happening when people can't truly accept this horrifying new reality that is around them, that they can't see it, that they think that Donald Trump is some sort of messenger of peace, while General Flynn is talking about, starting World War III with Iran. These people we're up in arms about a Saudi frigate getting bombed? Even if it was the Iranians, who the fuck cares? The Saudis just got done destroying Yemen. It was like, no shit the Houthis shot at them. They just destroyed that country, okay? For their own, sick geopolitical ends. To finally stamp out any opposition in the Gulf. Again, that's what that's all about. You look at Bahrain, any of these sort of small protests. Again, Yemen was part of the Arab Spring. Okay? People seem to forget that. Now, who knows how much of that was planned and whatnot. I tend to think in the case of Yemen, not so much, because there was just too much, there's too many, sort of like wild cards in Yemen. You've got all these tribes, the Houthis, you've got the, the sort of remnants of the, northern and southern Yemen, Salah, he gets bombed, his hands and face are all burned up. Now he's aligned with the Houthis, his former arch enemy. You've got the Iranian influence there. And Saudi Arabia did not want that on their doorstep. The same way that the GCC sent in troops to go, start attacking, and killing people in Bahrain and other places. The same thing. Okay, the Saudis are doing the same thing. They want to maintain their complete dominance over the Gulf and use it as their own personal piggy bank and as a recruitment center for jihadis that they export all over the world at the CIA's behest. So again, of course a Saudi frigate got bombed. It's like, I don't know, it's like disconnect. Like, okay, so Iran is behind that, and they're attacking the Saudis, who I guess are fine. We're not really going to criticize the Saudis or bring that up at all, because ultimately Iran is the bad guy. Okay, cool. I'm on board with that now. Where is the outrage about that? Where is the, okay, cool. So we're not going to war with Russia. We're just going to go to war with China and Iran. That should work out fine. I don't know. I mean, and I know I'm just like yelling right now and going on and on about this, but I don't know. I mean, like, part of me is just, not that I just want to like put my head in the sand, but I could use a break from all this fucking Trump shit. I don't know, and just the new geopolitical landscape as it's evolving right now is not too great. You know, it's not this, you know, wonderful thing. I don't know. It's much more surprising than I thought. It's really it's scarier than I thought it would be. And you know, would it be the same with Hillary Clinton? Probably. You know, I mean, it would be a different game, but I don't know. There's you know, that I think that we need to stop using that as an excuse. You know, or it would be worse under Hillary. Okay, maybe it would be, but then we're just back to the lesser of two evil arguments. So, okay, it would have been worse under Hillary Clinton because then we would have been fighting Russia. But, you know, it's better with Trump because we're fighting Iran and China. And let me say this too. I think, if we're going after Russia, yeah, you're not really going to have very many U.S. ground forces, you know, because we're going to use our, you know, jihadis and, you know, Al-Qaeda and stuff with some U.S. special forces and NATO air cover. Iran? I think that's a different story. You know, I don't think we're going to be sending in jihadis into Iran. We might use the MEK, you know, our favorite terror cult. Again, Rudy Giuliani, you know, Donald Trump's BFF, big MEK supporter. But I could also see, in the case of Iran, that could be U.S. ground forces. You know, we could easily shift some of these people we have in Iraq into Iran. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but that seems like a much more approachable thing. We're not going to win a ground war against Russia. That's just, you know, inconceivable. But against Iran, perhaps, you know, that seems more likely. At the same time, we could try, you know, to, get the Green Revolution going again and try and overthrow Iran. But I don't know. I think the color revolution stuff is, you know, it doesn't work quite as well as it did, you know, in the early 2000s and, you know, Arab Spring and even in the 90s as well. So I don't know. You know, I think when push comes to shove, the military, you know, the Pentagon and the CIA might see troops on the ground with Iran might work better. I don't know. But that seems way more tangible than Russia. So then it's like, what's the fucking difference? You know, is that's better than Hillary Clinton? You know, I mean, you can make the argument, at least it's just jihadis doing it, right? You know, and special forces. I mean, it's not like good. You know, you don't want to see these people getting killed, but it's not, you know, tons of, National Guard soldiers going to occupy Iran. I mean, that's the other thing too, is just like, we're going to put them on notice. Like, what? What are you going to do? You're going to either create sanctions to, starve, people to death and, you know, make sure that medicines don't get into that country, or what? You along with the Israelis, you're going to start, assassinating scientists in daylight? Or what? You're going to bomb, facilities in there? I mean, I mean, that again is scarier to me personally than whatever kind of rhetoric Hillary Clinton, was going to throw at Russia. You know, I mean, now again, yes, they could have continued the war in Syria, which would have been, I mean, horrific. And, you know, that's a plus. Okay. That's sort of ending. But anyway, I'm done rambling. I'm so sorry, to the listeners, for, having to cut our conversation with Frank Dimatteo short, but I will try and get him back on the show soon. So, until then, I will be talking to you next week.
news and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.